Hi, welcome to Supes On. I'm Jeremy Bruner, amateur Superman expert, joined by John McBride.
Fellow amateur Superman expert.
That's right. And normally here at Supes On, we discuss whether or not Superman is boring or whether a specific episode or comic issue or radio show actually helps disprove that common trope that Superman is boring and prove that he's exciting. But guess what, John?
What's that?
Supes doesn't have to refer to Superman.
The sound of gasping.
It does not. It could also refer to both Campbell's soup or any other brand of soup.
I think it's very misleading. A lot of people are excited about, finally, a podcast about soups that I enjoy. Well, you're wrong. This is about Superman and his related Superman family.
That's right. And today we're talking about the extended Superman family of Supergirl. And we're going to be talking about whether or not, instead of examining whether or not something's boring or not, we're going to be examining whether or not Supergirl is her own character or if she's essentially just a female Superman. A lot of times she gets the criticism of, oh, they just created her so we could have a girl superhero, but she's literally just a carbon copy of Superman.
Well, we're going to find out whether or not Supergirl is a character all her own with substance, or if she's just a girl for the sake of being a girl in a man's world.
You could say we're going to find out whether she's soups on or not.
She could be soups off.
All right, we will find out. All right, so we are recording now. So, John, what were you doing in 1984?
1984, I was only a few years old. I'm going to spoil a big secret. I was born in 1981. So you do the math about how old I was, because I actively refused to know how old I was in 1984. I can tell you one thing. I was not going to theaters, and I certainly wasn't watching, or even, nor was I even aware Supergirl was a thing. So there you go. Supergirl was a thing for the rest of the world, and it was released as a cinematic feature and adventure, an answer to her cousin Kal-El, Clark Kent's adventures. He had had three major motion pictures up until this point.
Oh, this came out before Quest for Peace?
Yeah, Superman 3 had already come out, at least I think. Please correct us at soupsonpodcast@gmail.com. And quick programming note, we did, in our last episode, cover the first appearance of Supergirl. We got to get technical, because technically Super Dash or Hyphen Girl did appear like a year before.
In Superman number 128. So thank you to random listener who sent that in to let us know, and they were correct. It was August 1958 that was the first appearance.
That's right. We pulled a super boner.
So what I was doing in 1984, for the most part, was gestating and being birthed.
You young people
are gestating. So
the younger generation is obsessed with gestation.
So Supergirl actually came out 1 week after I was born.
Well, happy birthday to you. You get Supergirl.
Yes, my birthday is long associated with disappointing movies. But no, this to me was less disappointing than I was expecting, just because this movie has such a bad reputation that I was expecting this to just be awful. And I have seen this before, but it's been realistically probably 20 years.
Yeah, I remember it being a while since I saw this movie, and I don't think I ever. Well, I can safely say I have never sat this movie all the way through. For our review of this movie, I kind of watched it over the course of a few days, because I just didn't have the time to sit there and watch it. And it was like that my entire life. So maybe
always the busy person.
Always the busybody. Just a busy beaver. That's me. So, but before, I remember like bits and pieces. And the only memory I have is that Supergirl was just garbage. Just a weird, cheesy, missing the point, lesser version of Superman.
So here's a interesting thing for me. I saw Supergirl, the movie, I know this for a fact, before I ever saw any of the Christopher Reeve Superman or anything. This is the first super-related movie I saw.
Wow, it's kind of like a little mini milestone here.
Yes.
And it's very fitting as we kind of transition to more of a Supergirl-focused mission statement, if you will.
Yeah.
So, in watching this, I'm recently, for this podcast,
Yeah.
I was watching this, and it wasn't like, I'm not going to go out and say this was instant masterpiece, or I misremembered this great movie from a golden era of cinema. No, this is still a weird, cheesy movie that at a lot of points, it's not like it didn't make sense because I got what was happening.
I think that's because you watched it over several days. Because I don't feel like there was anything that didn't make sense.
No, I think everything was explained, but it was just done in such a weird way. Like, I got a very, like, they were trying to make this space opera, almost Shakespearean type of deal. And I'm like, all right, I guess. But because, like Peter O'Toole, who was amazing in this movie.
He really did a great job, but he always does.
He was very committed to being Zoltar.
Yeah.
The guy who created Argo City.
Yes. I will say there's one thing that was never really explained in this. And that was, how did they survive? How did Argo City survive?
Yeah, and if we hadn't have read Action Comics number 252, I would have no concept of what was even happening, because I had to piece together, maybe it was like the origin story for Action Comics that we had read, where a chunk of Krypton blew up and is floating around in space, and good old Zoltar.
For all we know for this, Argo City was a moon station they had.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't know anything.
You know, I'm kind of like piecing this together from recent memory, but it wasn't really explained.
It was not explained. And the other thing, so I guess we're getting into the movie now. So for at the beginning, when they are in Argo City, I just want to, here's some inconsistency for you, for sure.
Okay.
Zoltar talks about traveling to Earth, and everyone's like, oh, that's great, you know, like as if it's no big deal. But then they talk about traveling, then Kara talks about traveling to Earth, and they're like, you can't, you'll be killed. Like, did they just not care about Zoltar? Or do they tell teenagers you'll be killed to prevent them from traveling? On top of that, they obviously had been watching Clark, because Supergirl not only knew that he went to Earth, that her cousin was on Earth, but she knew his secret identity already. And so they obviously have been watching him. So how come his only surviving family didn't try, if they can travel to Earth, didn't try to get him and take them with them? Like, it's once again another member of Clark's family not wanting to raise him.
Poor Clark. You really feel bad for Clark. It's like it was. I got the impression that there's some great consequence, like if you traveled outside of Argo City, even though that wasn't really properly explained.
It wasn't traveling outside of Argo City. It was traveling from inner space to outer space.
Oh, well, of course. Inner space through outer space. Maybe, like you said, that's just what they tell unruly, rebellious teenagers, like, hey, if you come home after midnight, an Earth person will come and get you.
Yeah, you got to be careful. And but the Argo City scene was, I thought, really well done. It did feel alien and advanced
in a very, very 80s way.
Yes.
Like, I got like a very vague, like Dune type of feel or something like that. Not exactly like that, but that general feeling. Like, this is very much an 80s weird sci-fi flick.
I do. So during the whole Argo City scene, there's one thing that was cut. I did look at a thing, because we both watched the international version of this, which is 124 minutes. There is a director's cut, which adds about 14 minutes. Most of those are just little 10 to 15 second snippets from what I noticed. One of them here in Argo, or actually several of them here in Argo City, but the only one worth mentioning was when Kara goes to the classroom. It's actually, they show one of the kids answering a question, and then Kara not being able to, before Kara's able to answer the question.
Yeah.
But I did have to say, and this is us looking at this through 2016, but the one, like, I guess, female stereotype that sometimes still persists, that is just sort of ridiculous, was present in this movie a few times, actually. But first on Argo City, where Kara was not good at math. And I was just like, they start off this movie by having the main lead female character not be good at math.
Just being a dumb blonde.
And then later on Earth, when she answers the math problem correctly, Lucy tells her not to do that because people won't like her. Like, it's like this movie has a, like, to me, I was just like, it's so weird that this pro-female movie has two instances of reinforcing girls shouldn't do math.
On two different
planets.
I guess Argo City is on a planet or something.
Who knows?
I forget if it's inner space or outer space.
In two different sections of the universe.
Yes. And that means it's a universal thing. It's a universal fact. Girls can't do math. Meanwhile, I didn't want to say how old I was in 1984. But Supergirl, don't answer that complex math equation. So the whole reason she has to, well, she doesn't have to go to Earth. She kind of...
Not at all.
No, she doesn't have to do anything, really.
No.
It was very, like... It did have similarities to the Action Comics 252 origin, where... Only in the sense that they might have been floating in a chunk that might have been from Krypton. But the power source...
Yeah.
I forget what they called it, like the hexagon or whatever. I know that's not... I know that's not what it is. Zoltar's kind of like playing around and stuff. He's kind of just... Zoltar's kind of an aloof type of guy.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted this movie just to be Zoltar. Actually, you know who I wanted this movie to be? This is skipping ahead, but I'm going to let you know who I think would have made a pairing, which I would have thought would have made a much better movie. It's kind of doofy Ethan, the love interest for Supergirl.
Yeah.
And Nigel. I thought snooty Nigel and doofy Ethan would have made it such a better movie.
So I'm going to go back. So you know what I think makes this movie go from being, let's just be honest, it is kind of bad.
There's nostalgia, it's the 80s charm, but ultimately it is not good.
It is not, yeah, and that's the whole thing. That's better. It isn't bad, but it is not good. I would not go so far as to say this is a bad movie. At least for me. Like, I mean, there is, like, dated-wise now, looking at it from 2016, yes, it's a bad movie. But for looking at it for its time, it was not good.
No.
There's a slight distinction there.
There is a reason there's no Supergirl 2,
exactly.
3.
To me, though, they had everything they needed for this to be a good movie. The villain actually used magic as opposed to being something else, which is something that's very underused.
Yeah, I mean, Superman is vulnerable to magic.
This could have been,
Supergirl is as well.
Yeah, this could have been, to me, a good movie, except for the villain's plots and ploys. I want everyone to love me, especially this gardener.
Yeah, this is another... I don't know if this delves into the feminism thing, because it was the villain.
Yeah.
Right, it was Faye Dunaway as the witchy villain, the evil witch.
Yeah.
And she's going out with Nigel, the snooty school teacher.
Like warlock.
Warlock. He's like a warlock,
male
witch or whatever. And he happens to be teaching at the school. Linda Lee, who
Midvale.
is Supergirl, Kara, she decides to be a human and goes to the school. So Nigel's the warlock, and they go to Nigel for help on at least one occasion.
I think two.
I like two. So they can't even do it by themselves. And the main witch, what does she want? Like you said, I want everyone to love me. World domination. And I'm horny for one dude who took his shirt off. The hunky landscaper. And that's it. She just wants to bone this guy.
Everything's right there. It's not like she's trying to destroy the world. And she says she's trying to take over the world. But is she really? Like, she does sort of toward the end. But she sort of takes over Midvale by taking over the cops and making everybody love her. Which it could have been, if they had even started that earlier, if she had already taken over like half the country or half the world was dedicated to her and there were actual stakes...
Right.
It would have actually, to me, brought this movie up to a good level.
I got the impression that they were sort of wanting a humorous approach at the villain.
Yeah.
Because Gene Hackman, he had definitely had funny parts.
And it also came out right after Richard Pryor in Superman 3.
So they were really riding the wave of the funny, can't take you seriously main villain.
Right.
But I'm thinking, like, if this is a movie that was... If this was a movie whose purpose was we're going to have a superhero for women and we're going to do like pro-feminism. I say if because I don't know if the producers or whatever really wanted to do this. I can assume.
I think the Salkins just wanted to make money.
I think the Salkins were in it for the money.
Yeah.
And but if you wanted to take any type of pro-feminism thing away from this, your main villain is somebody who just wants to go all the way with a hunky landscaper, and your main heroine is bad at math and is kind of just starry-eyed and doesn't. You can't really have a conversation with Supergirl because she's like, "What's that? What is a horse? What is a butterfly? I'm so amazed by the world."
When she talks to, I don't remember who it is, but I'm almost positive it was the principal, who's Principal Danvers. She said, "On Earth, I'm known as Linda Lee," and he did not bat an eye to that comment. He's just like, "All right, Linda Lee, okay."
Yeah, I'm gonna go around saying, "Well, on Earth, I'm known as John McBride." On Argo City, I don't know.
It just blew my mind. I do have to say, we're all around on this, but the beginning scene when she first gets to Earth, she somehow comes out of the water because rather than her ship crashing down like the Omega Hedron did, her ship just seemed to appear in the water because there was no scene, unless my movie skipped or something, of her actually crashing into the water. It's just her rising up out of the water in super costume. But those first scenes of her flying, not the ones where she's flying over the city and over the forest, but where she's just sort of experimenting with her powers, they were beautifully shot. Like, they were incredibly well shot.
Yeah, I mean, it looked really nice. I gotta say, some of the wire work on her flying looked really bad, though.
But that wasn't on the little ones. That was when she was doing, like, over the forest and over the city. Yeah. When she was actually just sort of learning to fly and sort of going here and there, I thought it was really well done, personally.
And it sort of plays into, well, it adds to what I thought was a good performance from Helen Slater, who played Supergirl, because she played this Supergirl the best based on what she was given, which wasn't a whole lot, but she did play a convincing, like, alien, because, like I said, she's sort of just amazed by the world.
By everything.
And she has nothing in common with anyone.
Right.
And she's learning everything. And what I really liked is she already knew about Clark, so she had Krypton as a memory, she had experiences with Argo City.
Yes.
Presumably she knew about Krypton,
yes.
I guess. So she's coming here, and Clark, he kind of comes, he's just told he's from Krypton, but all he knows is really Kansas and the farm.
Right.
So I like this dynamic, because she really, truly is an alien visitor.
I do say I did like also there, or I don't know if I guess I liked it, but also it was sort of interesting how did a difference between her and Clark. She instantly had control of her powers on Earth. There was no having to experiment to anything. When she got into the fight with the truckers at the beginning, like, she instantly wasn't hurting them. It was like she was in control of her own self, whereas Clark struggled with his powers.
It's possible because they knew Clark, they've been studying Clark, so
right.
Maybe when she got there, she knew what was up. She knew the deal. Yellow sun, I can fly. Let's go.
Right.
Max Headroom with the A&W shirt, a potential rapist. Him and his, like, dumpy friend. They're like, I can take these guys out with my super strength.
Right. And I will say, so this is my every episode we each try to give a interesting fact or stat. So here's my interesting fact. Eddie was one of the truckers. I believe his name was Eddie. I'd have to double check on that. Yeah. But I believe one of the truckers' name was Eddie. But that, if you are a fan of Orphan Black, is Dr. Leakey.
Dr. Leakey, that's
from
right.
From Orphan Black.
I went to Max Headroom, which and you went to Dr. Leakey. That's hilarious. Might as well say he was on an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. The guy's been a working actor for many years.
Yes.
Let's give it up to him.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Applaud break.
A round of applause for Dr. Leakey.
Yes. Let's see.
It's come a long way. There's one thing that I will say it's one of those things that it's not like it didn't make any sense, but it happened really quickly. I'm going to skip towards the end here. So Supergirl, through her trials and tribulations, battling Selena the Evil Witch.
Yes.
She's at one point sent to the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, somehow Selena knew how to send somebody to the Phantom Zone.
I guess
it's from the Omega Hedron.
The orb gave her knowledge, I guess. Interesting. This is involved. This is included in the Superman cinematic universe with Christopher Reeves, right? It's an interesting take because I think we get to see the Phantom Zone.
Yes, which we didn't get to see in the Superman ones.
No, so this is very interesting. And there she meets Zoltar. That's where Peter O'Toole ended up.
He exiled himself, I believe, is what he said.
I think so. And so while they're stranded in the Phantom Zone trying to figure out how to get back to Earth, we cut back. Okay, so before Selena sends her to the Phantom Zone, and when we get back to Earth, Selena has already taken over like half the world.
But that's not what happened.
Is that not what's happened? Because
if that had been what happened to me, that could have been a better movie. She had taken over Midvale.
Well, Midvale. And she had plans taking on half the world. But even then, even taking over Midvale, that happened so fast, and there is this off-screen rebellion happening when Lucy Lane, the sister of Lois,
and she hadn't even taken over Midvale. She had taken over Midvale's police force.
But it was enough of a power surge, I guess, to cut back, and already there's protesters and stuff.
Right.
So this had been happening for at least a little while.
Which to me, it would have been so much better if there hadn't been protesters. If it had been everyone was just a thrall to her. She gets back and finds her roommate, Lucy Lane, like fanning her as a slave, like had gone through and come back, and she had actually taken real control as opposed to a few people.
I mean, this is when they cut back and there's protesters, her and Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy Olsen.
Mark McClure,
killing it as Jimmy, as per usual. He comes in. He's sort of the boyfriend of Lucy. And they're just protesting Selena. So this is one of those things where I'm like, okay, I know I watched this movie like the day before and like I'm resuming it now. Did I miss something? Phantom Zone, and all of a sudden Lucy and company have organized a protest to stop Selena the Evil Witch in Midvale.
Right.
I'm like,
it's almost like an Archie. It sounds almost like not an Archie, like a Sabrina the Teenage Witch comic.
Yeah. It's like, how did this happen? All of a sudden, we're like, Selena must go, down with Selena.
And to be so, what Selena first says her goal is when she first gets the Omega Hedron is that she is going to thrill millions. That's a quote. She's going to thrill millions.
Could have said thrillions.
Well, yeah, she could have. But she opted not to.
That's why she lost. Spoiler: Faye Dunaway did not win.
So her power wasn't her end goal wasn't really even to take over the world. It was just to thrill millions.
She is just a performer who wants an audience.
Yes.
That's what I think. She lives in a creepy abandoned amusement park.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that's just desperately crying out for attention.
It's not an abandoned amusement park.
Well,
you know how I know it's not abandoned? Because for some reason, a gardener goes there to see if they need any landscaping work, and he goes and knocks on the haunted house door. Also, when they knock on the door, Bianca, Selena's friend, says, I hope it's not those Jehovah's Witnesses again. Who are all these Jehovah's Witnesses or other solicitors and people that are like, I'm going to go to the haunted house and the abandoned theme park to try to spread my message or see if they need work. And that was when I made my note, WTF is up with Midvale.
It was a crazy place to live.
It was because in some shots, Midvale looked like your small little country town. And then in other shots, it's this big sprawling city. Then there's an abandoned and then there's an abandoned haunted house. Like, I could never grasp if Midvale was supposed to be a small town or a large city. Well, it was never clear to me.
I'll tell you this about Midvale. It's not good if you're looking for work. If you're a landscaper, you got to go door to door.
Abandoned haunted houses.
Selena should conjure up a sign that says no solicitors.
No, it's not a good town if you're a gardener because Ethan has a lot of repeat customers. He even tells Selena that.
Well, I mean, Ethan might be like a gigolo.
True.
For all we know. And big shout out to Hart, what's his name? The guy who plays Ethan.
Yeah, he did a good job.
And also learned this today. He was Ellis from Die Hard.
Yeah.
Hans, Bobby, Selena, Bobby. I'm your white knight.
He just needed some cocaine.
He just needed some blow. He would have been fine. Speaking of blow, super breath all throughout this movie.
Yes.
What is it? Why does Supergirl know how to use your super breath?
Because she's awesome. So if this is your first episode, freeze breath is by far my and John's favorite power. And Superman seems to hate using it. Never uses it.
Yeah, I don't know why Clark just avoids having. Maybe it's like I'm sorry. I'm going to present to you my theory why Clark never uses his super breath, at least not as much as he should. Because maybe when he was a kid, he was just like going blowing out things, or maybe he blew up birthday candles and he destroyed like half the farm.
Yeah.
And they said, "Don't use your super breath," and he just had like a mental block.
Maybe so.
That's what I think. But Linda Lee, Kara here, has no such block. She's blowing everything.
Yes.
That came out exactly how I wanted it to.
So I do have to say, one thing that I did find kind of confusing. So she goes to Earth on a secret mission to find the Omega Hedron that she decided to undertake. No one asked her to.
She kind of sneaks away.
She snuck away. So she went because she felt it was her fault. So
okay, she's owning it.
She's owning it. But here's the real question: why adopt a secret identity and go to school?
Yeah, she decides. Like again, maybe it's because she studied Clark, and that's what Kal-El did.
Or is it that she knows she's supposed to go to school every day, and she didn't want to get behind?
She's like, well, I found this wig, had this outfit.
No, she seemed to have like super clothes changing
That's
powers.
right. Efficient use of weird powers.
Yeah.
Efficient use of like, I'm just going to like change the matter that I'm wearing. I'm going to rearrange molecules and junk. I think Supergirl, maybe even Superman, they have all these crazy powers they just like forget about.
Yeah. Like Clark, you don't actually need to keep your suit on underneath your clothes. You can just change what you're wearing by walking behind a tree or flying through a pipe.
Yeah. We sort of did that in the newer comics. He kind of has like a weird.
That is true.
So the comics finally caught up to the movies. We mentioned the Phantom Zone a little earlier, and we saw Zoltar, Peter O'Toole, and which makes me. I forgot to ask you this before, Jeremy. Squirt.
What?
Squirt. Would you like a squirt in your mouth?
Oh, yeah.
Here, no talkie, just squirty.
Yeah. That was a very weird scene.
I get the waiting. Okay, Zoltar's going to explain this is the only nutrients in the Phantom Zone.
He's just weird.
He just likes to squirt people. So the mad squirter, that is Peter O'Toole.
Very much so. So some of the other things that Selena does, other than send her to the Phantom Zone, I feel like there was one scene that only played out the way it did because they ran out of budget, or they ran out of CGI budget. And that was the scene where she sent a shadow to go kill Supergirl. Yeah. And it was just these scenes of like the earth being ripped up and all this stuff. That just screamed to me they wanted to have a monster there, and they couldn't afford to make it look like there was a monster doing all this stuff. And then that was only amplified when somehow comic book movie science happened, and she ripped up a lamppost, flies up to the sky, lets it get struck by lightning like 12 times, and that charges the lamppost because fake science. Then she flies down and unleashes it on the beast, and you see the outline of this like shadow creature. It was like it seemed to me that was all we had the budget to do. So instead of us seeing this monster, we just see the brief outline of it as she defeats it. And
we discover Supergirl's other power, redirecting electricity through lamppost.
There was a it isn't weird on Krypton moment in this movie.
Oh.
Did you catch it?
Let's see if I can think. What, it had to have been something on Argo City.
Nope.
No.
An on Earth moment.
Oh. Was it Supergirl and Lucy getting it on?
No.
I know what you're talking about. She kind of longingly caressed her fingers on the poster.
It is not weird on Krypton to caress your cousin's chest, a picture of your cousin's chest.
And I'll just say, in regards to that poster, I know we're talking about Supergirl, but for Clark specifically, that poster was definitely Supes On all the way. Clark was killing it in that pose.
It was a very classic pose.
It was very, very nice. And I know we're going all over the map here, which is
It's
It's
fine.
your first episode, you should know that we kind of do this a lot.
Yes.
But because I just mentioned squirting just a second ago, but I want to kind of retread that it wasn't just Supergirl who had the bad at math example here. I think this was just more than just Linda, because even Lucy, who of course is Lois's sister, she's going to Midvale, and she's roommates with Linda Lee. She sees Nigel, and she says, they say, "Who's that?" "I think that's my math teacher."
That's true.
You don't know who your math teacher is. You
I
pay
forgot.
such little attention in school. This is why they're bad at math. Because of Nigel's boring, I guess. Can you imagine going to school like, "Oh yeah, I think that's one of my teachers.
That's my teacher.
I think it's one of the
In
people."
college, that might be okay when you're in a
Yeah.
class with like 400 people and you sit at the back and can barely see your professor.
You need binoculars to see this. You need super telescopic vision. But this is like, is that the person I see every single day?
Is that my math teacher that I see daily?
That
I
see
think
on the
it
reg?
is.
I think it's him I see on the reg. Oh, you know what else was off in this movie? Nigel's teeth. Good grief! You talk about stereotypes. Bad British smiles and bad British just. God, it was hard to look at it sometimes. I'm like, Nigel, close your mouth, man.
It was fine.
No
It was
speaking
fine.
lines for this guy. But other than that, the guy was actually really good.
Oh yeah, he did a really good job. And you know who else was good in this, even though their part was sort of stupid? Bianca.
I liked Bianca.
Selena's friend. You know what Bianca said at one point? Maybe you shouldn't try to be getting this gardener to fall in love with you and fighting Supergirl.
Bianca was all of us watching this
She
movie.
was the audience. Several times she said stuff that I was like, you are the voice of reason.
She is the only one saying, maybe you shouldn't do this.
Yeah, this is kind of weird and there's no point to it.
It made me question their friendship. Why are they friends to begin with?
Yeah.
Maybe Bianca is just afraid, like, I can't leave. Like, I'm watching it first, I'm thinking, okay, she's the Otis to Selena's Lex, I guess. But Bianca is very intelligent and very
Yes.
self-aware.
Much more so than Selena.
Like, maybe the smartest person in this movie is Bianca. I think if there should be a female empowerment role model, it should be
Bianca.
Bianca. It's definitely Bianca.
Definitely Bianca.
She had her stuff together.
Though at the same time, she did have low self-esteem because she was bowing to Selena.
True, and I think that's the real moral of the story is
Do whatever Selena says.
don't be Bianca.
Be Bianca,
Be
but
Bianca.
a braver Bianca.
Be more proactive, Bianca.
Yeah.
Imagine put that on a poster. Be more proactive, Bianca, and it's just the actors going, man, Selena's right.
So speaking of jumping around, the rabbit at the very beginning was very well trained. There was a scene where Supergirl wakes up and there's a rabbit next to her, and it just jumps over to her, and as she starts to move, it doesn't freak out. I was just
Yeah.
like, that was a well-trained rabbit. Kudos to the rabbit handler. I didn't look up who it was for this movie, but if you happen to be that rabbit handler or know who the rabbit handler was, pass on my props.
That's right. I think very. That was Rabbits On. Remember?
Rabbit's on for sure.
The rabbit will get its own podcast.
So do we want to talk about what powers she used in this?
The crazy powers that Supergirl had. She had the classics. You get your flight, your super strength, invulnerability, heat vision,
Yes.
super breath.
Yes.
Hell yeah. super
X-ray
breath.
vision.
X-ray vision. Redirecting electricity.
Redirecting
yes.
electricity, changing your clothes on a whim. The one power that I don't know that we could argue that she used in this was super speed.
Actively using super speed, not like how flying you fly fast, not like jumping is just jumping. This is actually using speed.
I don't think she did.
I do not recall
Because even
an
when
instance.
even when she was flying, she
Instant.
wasn't flying like super fast or anything. She was just sort of moseying around.
Nothing that would qualify as super speed.
Yeah.
You know?
Did
So
she, did she use those powers efficiently?
clothes changing, definitely.
Yeah.
It worked. Electricity, nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
The super strength. So the only thing that comes to mind is when she trapped Selena during their final fight, she just threw a bunch of bars and kind of surrounded Selena.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this thinking, Supergirl, you know that Bianca, the real hero, you know that Selena has magical powers that can harm you. So what's your
Does she know they can harm her?
Harm her specifically?
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe not, but she does know Selena can cause a bunch of destruction.
Yeah.
So she doesn't really have to really do anything. She can just say words, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like tape her mouth shut or something, but no, just bars surrounding her like a jail. And her friend Bianca, who is her slave apparently, is just there. Bianca even asks, "Do you want like a hacksaw or something?
Yeah.
I'm here to free you." And so I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and say not the best use of powers, because you could have done almost anything to stop Selena. And you just kind of, here you go, here's some bars, see you later, hope Bianca doesn't free you.
I'm fine with that. To me, the only real inefficient use of powers was when she was fighting Selena and the ground starting to crumble beneath her, and she doesn't just fly.
That's
like,
right.
She's kind of wobbling, like, oh man, the ground's giving way. Like, you can fly.
Float.
You've been doing it a lot. Like, just sort of float. You'll be fine if the ground falls away because you can fly.
Yeah, maybe it's one of these things where it's like, well, me as a comic book fan, I know magic can hurt super people from Krypton, I guess. Still, I'm really grasping and reaching for explanations, but I'm coming up short.
Yeah.
Coming up real short. So, inefficient use of flight. Just kind of forgetting.
Right.
Maybe there is like a math problem involved. She just got stuck in her brain.
So I will say, so here's the one thing we haven't talked about in this podcast that is supposed to be the whole point of this podcast.
Right.
Was Supergirl her own character, or was she just a watered-down Superman?
Boy, this is tough because I'm trying to separate a lot of other versions and more modern versions of Supergirl.
Yeah.
And think about this one in 1984.
Right.
At least that's when the movie was released. Anyway, this, I'm thinking it's about 90%, hey, look, it's a girl version of Superman. 10% a little bit of her own substance. But because she was, I don't want to say ditzy because I'm giving her a pass. She's an alien that just showed up like a day before.
Yeah.
So she's really new to the planet and plays that really well, like I said before. So it's sort of like it's understandable why she would act the way she's acting. But for the most part, I got to say it's Superman, but he's wearing a skirt. So I'm going to say ultimately this is just Supergirl for the sake of being a girl.
Okay, so I agree with how it is there for a couple of reasons. One, she's just sort of here to do good. She instantly falls in love with somebody she sees, kind of with Ethan, just like Clark falls in with Lois. I mean, she is sort of her own. She is her own character in the sense that she's not doing good to do good. She's doing good to try to correct a wrong she made. She's not actively trying to go out and stop crimes at all. And so that's a pretty big difference.
Right.
There is actually a deleted scene that's in the director's cut that makes her more of her own character, in my opinion. And that is the bullies before she sprays them with water and all that in the shower scene. The bullies specifically pick on her. And if you have that scene in there beforehand, the whole shower scene makes it revenge as opposed to doing anything else.
So this wasn't Linda Lee just saying like, oh, those bullies are doing bad stuff, I'm going to stop them. Like, no, like, I'll show those B words.
Right. And so, like, this, I don't know. I agree with you and I don't. Like, I wouldn't say 90%. I would probably go, like, 75 or even 70 maybe. Because, like, I do feel she's there for her own mission. She's not there to try to go to Earth to be Earth's savior or anything like that. Like, once she gets the Omega Hedron, she's like, all right, peace.
He throws up the deuces to Earth.
Yeah, and to Ethan. Clark would never like say peace, Lois. Well, except for the multiple times he has. But
Well, to be fair, like for Supergirl, Ethan fell in love with her as a result of a spell.
but then he really did love her.
I know that even in movie time, where people fall in love over like 3 hours, still, even this, like, we've known each other for like maybe a day,
Maybe two.
Hey, and let's be honest, you're a landscaper. I can do better. I mean, I'm Supergirl, and I'm like in high school. How old are you?
Yeah. I don't know. They definitely were different characters for sure, but was there enough character differences to really make them unique? Not particularly.
No, I gotta say, outside of different set of genitals, not a whole lot here making Supergirl. She did have a pretty sweet watch.
Yeah.
A wrist watch that told her where the orb was.
Yeah, and rather than just following that and getting the orb immediately, she enrolls in school.
She wanted the Earth experience, I guess.
The Earth experience. All right, so overall, I think we know where you're going, but Supes on or Supes off?
I gotta tell you, Supes is the opposite of on, in my opinion.
So dim?
So very, very dim. It's a dimmer switch on the Supes. And some parts of this movie were very dim. So yes, definitely Supes off. I think it was Supes off because this is an attempt to... It was, like you said, it's the Salkins just trying to make money. And the Salkins are pretty weird to begin with.
Yeah.
And the Salkins are sort of like, we owe a lot to them because we got great Superman movies as a result that made Superman a lot of what he is today. But they also did really weird stuff like in this movie. So you take the good with the bad. And in this case, it was more bad than good. So I say Supes off.
So you're going with Supes off. Well, I am too. A lot of the same sort of reasons. It's just, overall, it wasn't a good movie. It's not going to attract fans to Supergirl. People who just thought Supergirl was a boring version of Superman are going to still think the same thing at this. It wasn't anything that was just amazing or anything like that. It wasn't, oh my gosh, she's definitely different. So, to me, it definitely did not do what it set out to accomplish by any means.
Right. Nothing really stood out to me. And I think this just shows how... I mean, Supergirl as a character has come a long way. A lot of ups and downs. A lot of just very weird versions for a character that's been around since the 50s. And it's taken half a century, more than that, for her to finally come into her own. And sadly, 1984 wasn't the year for Supergirl, in my opinion.
What's really crazy to me is, like, that is sort of when she was coming of her own in the comics. She definitely was starting to, because that was starting to get into a little bit before Crisis on Infinite Earths. She was actually, she was no longer that, I look up to my cousin. My cousin's the best, starry-eyed sort of teenager. She really was sort of, I'm my own person.
Right.
In the comics around that time. But then, of course, just a few years later, Supergirl's now Matrix and not even Supergirl. But that happens about 4 or 5 years after this in the comics.
I don't think we have enough time to try to explain whatever that was supposed to be.
But I'm just saying, like, it sort of is disappointing because they could have done a lot more with this. And they just didn't. But at the same time, if they had what I wanted, which is the villain to have been more villainous and Supergirl to have stopped her, it wouldn't have done anything more of making her own character. They just didn't show her own struggles, her own internal struggles at all. Anything she was struggling with, if she was struggling with anything in this movie, was all internal, and it was never spoken about or even hinted at.
Right, and this is one of the things, when you see, like, girl versions of things, it's really not its own. To me, it's like creating the girl version. On the one hand, you could say it's for equality or something, which is fantastic. But if you're not really doing anything that's independent or as an individual, then you really are just literally the girl version of something else, and that's all you are. That's your
Right.
identity. I think a lot of that was in Supergirl, the 1984 film. It's just
They didn't even they didn't even show her struggling to try to live up to her cousin's standard or anything like that.
no, she just like, my cousin's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, gotta go.
Got to go get that Omega Hedron in peace.
Well,
So, all right, so we
think-
both thought that was Soups Off. Thank you for joining us
Yeah.
for Soups On, our first Supergirl edition, or I guess technically our second edition
technically.
of Supergirl. Next week, we're actually going to be doing our thoughts on the first season of the new, now CW, but was CBS show Supergirl. And we hope you tune in then. If you do have any questions or comments for us, or you just want to give us a piece of your mind or tell us we were wrong, you can email us at soupsonpodcast@gmail.com or follow us at Twitter at soupsonpodcast. You can find us under that same handle on Facebook or
Instagram.
the Gram, or Tumblr, I think.
Maybe? I think so.
I think we have one. It's all on soupsonpodcast.com.
There you go. And for right now, we're going to have the quest for piecing out.
Yes, signing off. Thank you for joining us.